Clara Page stepped out of her mud-splattered car, her boots sinking slightly into the gravel of the prestigious Stormridge Equestrian Ranch. Her heart raced as she took in the luxurious setting, a world away from her modest life. The sprawling fields were dotted with sleek, well-groomed horses trotting in their pristine paddocks. Under a bright azure sky, the scent of fresh hay and polished leather mingled with delicate floral notes drifting from meticulously tended gardens. As she entered the main courtyard, Clara felt the heavy gaze of the affluent guests, their equestrian attire crisp and flawless, each a living testament to wealth and privilege. Conversations paused momentarily, eyes sweeping over her mud-smeared jacket, dirt-specked jeans, and scuffed boots, quickly dismissing her as an outsider, someone who had strayed into their exclusive haven by mistake. She swallowed her nerves and kept walking, absorbing it all, the exquisite ceramic tiles underfoot, the arched stable doors carved finely in teak. Each step further highlighted the stark contrast between her unkempt appearance and the impeccable surroundings. Nearby, two well-dressed women leaned in, exchanging hushed, disdainful remarks. "Who let her in here?" one whispered, loud enough for Clara to overhear. "She's really dragging in the muck." Clara's cheeks flamed, but she marched onward, holding her head high as the ranch's manager, a severe-looking woman with sharp, appraising eyes, stopped her dead in her tracks. The manager's assessing eyes flickered across her muddied ensemble, a subtle curl of disapproval evident on her lips. For a moment, Clara hesitated, nerves constricting her throat as patronizing laughter echoed around her. She felt exposed, like a lone ship battered by a storm, as the manager prepared to approach, suspicion etched into her features. The stable manager approached with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excuse me, miss, can I help you?" Her voice dripped with an icy politeness that barely masked her condescension. Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm here to admire valor," Clara replied, her voice firm despite the quiver in her gut. "I've followed his career for years." The manager tilted her head, surveying Clara as if weighing her words for truth. "Valor, our prize stallion, isn't just on show for anyone. Do you have an appointment?" Clara met the steely gaze head-on. "I was hoping for a quick visit. I mean no harm." The manager's laugh was curt and dismissive. "You can't just waltz in off the street to see our animals." Her eyes swept over Clara's mud-stained jeans. "Besides, we have standards to maintain. We wouldn't want such filth near our champion." A few guests nearby half-cocked their heads to hear, their amusement barely concealed. One man pulled out his phone, pretending to text but clearly filming the interaction. "Maybe she's looking to shovel some stalls," he muttered to the woman beside him, who smirked in response. As laughter echoed softly around her, Clara's cheeks flushed crimson. She fought to keep her voice steady. "I understand, but..." The manager cut her off with a flick of her hand. "It's non-negotiable," she said briskly. Turning to a junior stable hand, she motioned him over. "Please escort this lady to the exit." Clara stood momentarily frozen, the sting of public humiliation tightening around her like a vice. Her resolve faltered under the growing pressure of laughter and the judgmental stares from the onlookers. She turned, ready to comply if only to escape the scrutiny of so many eyes, when the stable hand approached, awkward but insistent. "I'm sorry, miss," he mumbled, gesturing toward the exit. The young man's face flushed with embarrassment, clearly caught between duty and sympathy. Clara glanced around, meeting the eyes of those who had witnessed her shame. Not one of them stepped forward, not one spoke on her behalf. The coldness of their indifference seeped into her bones, each silent observer complicit in her ordeal. Her chest tightened with a mix of anger and profound disappointment. She took a deep breath, trying to maintain a semblance of dignity. "I'll go," she said quietly, forcing her feet to move forward even as her heart urged her to run the other way. As she passed the open paddocks, Clara caught glimpses of the horses, tall and majestic, grazing in their enclosure, utterly oblivious to the judgments she faced. Her fingers itched to reach out, to touch even a single one, to find solace in the presence of the creatures she had admired for so long. The murmured insults and quiet laughs followed her like shadows, lingering in the air. Clara pressed on, her head lowered, fiercely holding back tears as she neared the exit. Her heart pounded a somber rhythm, echoing the echoes of doubt that now clouded her mind. At the threshold of the ranch's manicured grounds, she paused, taking one last look over her shoulder at the world that had so harshly rejected her. The contrast between the opulent surroundings and her own muddied form was stark, a brutal reminder of her exclusion. Just as she was about to step out into the gravel path, the stable hand leading her hesitated. "I'm really sorry about this," he said softly, a flicker of genuine regret in his eyes. Clara offered him a tight smile. "It's not your fault," she replied, grateful for his small gesture of kindness amidst the cold dismissiveness shown to her by others. She turned toward the parking lot, aware of the scrutiny fading only as the distance between her and the spectators grew. It wasn't far, but the walk seemed interminable, each step along the graveled path leading her further from the arena of her disgrace. Once outside the ranch's gate, she paused beside a small wooden bench, the weight of the morning's humiliations crashing down on her. She slumped onto the rough wood, wiping at the streaks of mud caked along her jeans and boots, each smudge an unforgiving reminder of the ridicule she had endured. Yet, even as the sting of their remarks lingered, Clara's resolve slowly began hardening again beneath the pain. She'd faced setbacks before and found her way through more challenging trials. A fleeting glimmer of determination sparked within her, urging her to rise above this episode, her spirit resilient against the indifference shown. Nearby, the clamor of the ranch activities resumed as though she had never intruded upon it. A world moved on undisturbed by her presence or the encounter. The world she occupied at that moment felt separate, harshly isolated beneath the cloudless sky. She gazed out at the rolling hills, letting nature's beauty momentarily soothe her frayed nerves. Still seated, she took deep breaths, a conscious effort to regain the self-assurance she'd momentarily misplaced. She couldn't yet entirely dispel the shame but wouldn't let it consume her. Little did Clara know, however, that this was far from the end. As the gates swung open once more, allowing the trickle of elite guests to resume their passage in and out, Clara remained seated, unaware of how the next ripple of events was already forming, set to change everything, and lift her back into a world she didn't know she could own. Meanwhile, back within the pristine confines of the Stormridge Equestrian Ranch, the stable manager marched briskly through the stables, her nose tucked high as she passed the line of immaculate stalls. Her sharp footsteps echoed against the polished cobblestones, a testament to her satisfaction from swiftly dealing with the disruption that Clara represented. She returned to her duties, convinced that she'd preserved the sanctity of their exclusive domain. In her office, lined with trophies, ribbons, and photographs of past champions, she sat, feeling content with her decision. As she settled back into her routine, she glanced occasionally at the large window overlooking the tranquil fields, where the elites still mingled, undisturbed by Clara's exit. Maintaining the ranch's air of exclusivity was her priority, she reassured herself. Anyone who didn't belong would only disrupt the delicate balance they had cultivated. Surely, the brief incident had only reinforced her resolve. No sooner had she gotten comfortable than peals of laughter and lively chatter filled the courtyard outside, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. The guests continued their leisurely perusal of the grounds, inspecting the elegant horses and their facilities, the incident with Clara quickly fading into an insignificant sidebar in their upscale day. Clara, sitting on the bench outside, stared out across the ranch landscape, struggling to regain composure, feeling as though the world within those gates had swallowed her whole and spat her out just as easily. Despite her efforts to fight back the tears, one escaped, tracing a solitary path down her cheek. As she wiped it away with the back of her hand, she felt a presence nearby. Her head lifted, eyes squinting slightly against the afternoon sun, and she saw a sleek black limousine pulling up along the gravel. Her curiosity piqued when an impeccably dressed chauffeur emerged, moving toward her purposefully. He carried with him an air of familiarity, holding a gleaming envelope sealed with distinctive gold filigree. Miss Clara Page, he addressed her politely, his voice cutting through the sounds of distant hoofbeats and rustling leaves. Yes, she replied cautiously, her earlier defenses rising again as she prepared for another barrage of judgment. The chauffeur extended the envelope toward her. "I've been sent by Mr. William Harper, a request to escort you inside," he said confidently, showcasing a glimpse of the emblem on the elegant card. "You have been invited to return as a guest of honor." Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. "But I thought..." Another voice interrupted. "Excuse me, ma'am," a uniformed figure in a royal equestrian official's attire approached, breathless from urgency. "I'm sorry, miss, but we've been expecting you." The small crowd that had begun to gather outside the gates to witness this unexpected turnaround exchanged curious glances. The stable hand who had escorted Clara earlier stood at the periphery, wearing an expression of surprise and confusion. Within seconds, murmurs filled the air like a rising tide, sweeping over those gathered and sparking anew among the ranch's guests who sidled closer to understand the unfolding scene. The tide of amusement and disdain quickly turned to interest and intrigue as Clara began entering the gate once more, flanked this time by escort and official. Her heart pounded anew, a tumult of emotions crashing against the walls she'd hastily built. She clutched the invitation like a lifeline, her mind a whirl of questions and disbelief. With each step back inside, she felt the collective eyes of the crowd now watching her, their earlier assumptions beginning to unravel. Back within the boundaries of the ranch, the stable manager's attention was unceremoniously brought back to the reality outside her secluded office. Guests who had dispersed for horse exhibitions now buzzed with speculation, pointing in what seemed like disbelief toward the interest their management clearly failed to glean before. Ignoring the whispers of curiosity, Clara was led straight toward the main courtyard where elegant marquees had been set up around the magnificent arena. There, she noticed the level of decorum and opulence that had earlier emphasized her exclusion. Now, ironically, it all lay within her reach. It didn't take long for the official to garner everyone's attention, raising his voice above the din. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? As many of you already know, we have a special guest with us today. Please welcome our esteemed keynote sponsor and celebrated philanthropist, Miss Clara Page." Gasps mingled with the hurried buzz of collective realization that rippled swiftly outward. Clara herself stood at the center, feeling the warmth of the spotlight her humility had earned. The stable manager, lurking behind the rails of the pristine paddock, shifted uncomfortably, the dignity of her position wobbling on the cusp of realization. Valor, the prize stallion, stood majestic in fervent recognition beyond the paddock, prancing restlessly as if sensing Clara's presence anew. Watching him, something inside her settled, his large eyes echoed the kindred spirit she sought. Amidst the sudden scramble of apologies and attempts at face-saving politeness, Clara held herself with quiet dignity, acknowledging those who had previously dismissed her with the merest of nods. The manager found herself suddenly exposed, out of step with the graceful scene that unfolded without her orchestrating its pace. And so, as the afternoon sun bathed the ranch in a golden hue, illuminating the cold aloofness of those who had spurned as well as those who now clamored for her acknowledgement, Clara stood among them. Her presence alongside valor, emblematic of her journey, from humiliation to heartfelt recognition, reflected not only her ascent but cast reflections upon a world suddenly reshaped by her quiet strength. Clara stood at the center of the courtyard, her head held high, her presence commanding respect without a hint of vengeance or remorse. The eyes of the once dismissive crowd now fixated upon her, each personality within burning with sudden realization and regret. All around, whispers erupted like the rustle of wind through autumn leaves, carrying tales of her unexpected re-emergence and the truths that now defied their initial judgments. As the crowd subdued, Clara was led to a raised platform overlooking the splendid grounds, where the royal equestrian official presented her to the assembled guests. Valor, the grand stallion, ceased his restless stride and stood with noble elegance at the edge of the adjacent paddock, his eyes locked on Clara as if sensing the moment's significance. "Ladies and gentlemen," the official proclaimed, we gather not only in celebration of equestrian excellence but also to recognize the pivotal contributions made by those who, though unassuming in appearance, are giants in character and generosity. It is with immense honor that I introduce Miss Clara Page, our keynote sponsor and the esteemed owner of Valor himself. The revelation rippled profound disbelief and hints of shame through the crowd, particularly among those whose earlier derision now felt searingly misplaced. Faces flushed with surprise, guests adjusted their figures, casting glances at one another, unsure of whether to extend apologies or hide within their self-induced disbelief. The stable manager, having positioned herself unobtrusively at the fringes, felt the sting of irony that her own judgments had led her to demean the very individual holding substantial sway over the ranch's fate. Her eyes met Clara's, the older woman's disbelief slowly morphing into something akin to embarrassment. Clara's demeanor was a picture of calm amidst the swirling storm of reactions around her. She wore no smirk nor sought satisfaction in their dismay. Her ability to rise unaffected by the derision showed the grace undeterred by opinion, and she spoke with a gentleness that carried strength rather than frivolity. As Clara began to speak, her voice was firm but gentle. "I am both humbled and grateful for the opportunity to be part of this distinguished event," she stated, her words steady yet inviting. "Today isn't about me alone, nor even Valor, magnificent as he is. It is about celebrating the sport I love, and the community we build together, regardless of attire or assumptions." Her words struck silent chords among her audience, disarming the arrogance that had initially dismissed her simple appearance. The gravity of her success, both on and off the paddock, reflected a deeper beauty, one unshackled from the pretenses many had clouded themselves with upon her initial arrival. With poise, she recounted her journey, a former competitive rider whose love for horses guided her passions beyond personal victories, rooting them instead in creating opportunities for young enthusiasts from diverse backgrounds. Her humble beginnings in the sport, an ambition enriched by simplicity and hard work, became a testament to transcending socio-economic boundaries and focusing on shared passions. Listening in astonishment, the ranch guests, previously drawn solely by predetermined notions of prestige, soaked in her story. The contrast between Clara's unwavering humility and the opulent surroundings evoked a silent shift, aspiring to find meaning beyond superficial appearances. Even the stable manager, her earlier smug confidence now curdling into discomfort, couldn't avoid the meaningful shift occurring within her own beliefs. The pride she had taken in upholding status was re-examined under the warm spotlight of truth Clara shone upon them all. As Clara concluded, Valor himself seemed to echo her sentiments, stepping forward and pushing his head toward the platform, his strong presence a tangible reminder of the bond shared between owner and horse. The scene was captivating, a silent consonance of power and grace. Guests began to approach Clara, now eager to realign themselves within her presence, offering congratulatory words and awkward, belated apologies for prior transgressions. Hands extended eagerly, seeking forgiveness by aligning with Clara's newly revealed stature. The women who had disparaged Clara earlier stood silently, admiration now etching their expressions. They shuffled closer, seeking acknowledgement that Clara, without malice, offered through a simple, knowing smile. Clara, ever gracious, received them without judgment, her kindness no longer obscured by superficial attire. Her minimalistic approach had arisen not from inadequacy, but from choice, a personal vow to always be grounded, favoring authenticity over ornamentation in each encounter with nature's creatures. This revelation offered the snobbish assembly a lesson in perspective and discernment. Their collective reaction, a mix of self-awareness and newfound respect, signaled the beginning of shifts resonating beyond just Stormridge's prestigious grounds. As the formalities drew to a close, Clara nodded thankfully to the audience before stepping down from the platform. She headed straight for Valor, who awaited her just beyond the railing, his gentle eyes filled with intelligence and warmth. She reached out, caressing his muzzle gently, the simple, tiny connection brimming with unspoken understanding between them. In that moment, Clara's presence had altered the surroundings, a place marked by superficial exclusivity now reclaimed by authenticity and belonging. No longer defined by the bounds of attire or judgment, the ranch's atmosphere adapted, the undercurrents of truism becoming the whispers of truth. What had begun with scorn and derision was transformed by contrast and clarity, leaving behind lessons written not in the language of luxury, but in the calligraphy of courage and simplicity, followed by those willing to see. Clara Page, standing humbly beside her prize stallion, had not only reclaimed her place but reshaped the stories whispered within those prestigious halls forevermore. The VIP luncheon resumed with Clara at the center, effortlessly drawing attention and admiration. Although conversations buzzed with eager renewed curiosity about her life and achievements, Clara remained grounded, embodying an air that combined humility with quiet power. All the while, guests made subtle efforts to gravitate towards her light, wanting their association known with the philanthropist and influential horse owner she'd been revealed to be. Minutes later, William Harper, Clara's husband and a co-owner of the Storm Ridge Ranch, entered the venue. His entrance was commanding, yet approachable, clearly unfazed by the elegance surrounding him. He was a man trained to balance grandeur with humility, and his presence accounted for both in Clara's eyes, a partnership forged in understanding and mutual respect. William made a beeline for Clara, greeting her warmly with a gentle, familiar hand on her shoulder that spoke more than words. "Shall we?" he asked quietly, gesturing toward the smaller meeting reserved for the inner circle discussion they had planned prior to all the unfolding drama. As they moved together to convene with interested partners about the upcoming initiatives inspired by Clara's community program, Clara caught sight of the stable manager standing nervously to one side. Her earlier composed demeanor now appeared diluted, replaced by an expression mingled with embarrassment and apology. William paused, sensing the encounter's significance, and Clara looked over at him, a silent agreement passing between them without words. With the caring assurance he always offered, William publicly addressed the stable manager, including her within earshot of the gathering crowd. "I understand, Ms. Griffiths, it's been a challenging day," William began, gently but firmly asserting the lessons to be drawn. "I trust moving forward we'll balance our standards of excellence not only with exclusivity but with deeper inclusivity, remembering the integrity that truly elevates us." The crowd of guests nodded, some enthusiastically, others with understanding dawning more gradually. Clara observed Griffiths, who clearly absorbed the sentiment, her expression softening as personal resolve surfaced below regret. The manager's earlier arrogance was re-evaluated under this authentic exchange of ideals. "I apologize, madam," Griffiths addressed Clara directly, her tone sincere despite the formalness of the scene. "My actions were short-sighted. I'd like to extend my apologies for not recognizing your involvement from the beginning." Clara responded with her characteristic poise, acknowledging the apology with the grace emblematic of her path. "Thank you. I appreciate your words, but let's seek to make this a lesson for the future, not just within ourselves but with all whom we serve and welcome here," she urged, gently extending the message toward everyone who had been witness to the event. With those words, Clara reinstated more than her position. She defined a new ethos the ranch had been missing, one that cherished love for the sport, regardless of socio-economic prejudices. Her composure and resolve initiated nothing short of a quiet revolution, reimagining what such exclusivity should represent. In the days that followed, the ripples of the encounter swept through equestrian circles, gaining traction on blogs and vlogs that chronicled the elite sports circuit. Social media lit up with posts reflecting admiration for Clara's dignified handling of the situation. The spat between Griffin and Clara became a case study for the equestrian world, igniting conversations about attitude shifts needed to protect passion from the tarnish of pretentiousness. Griffiths, in the wake of this unforeseen lesson, faced consequences like professional development training to ensure respectful treatment of all ranch visitors. Her earlier transgressions converted into learning opportunities, emphasizing the significance of awareness and perception that the ranch now banked on to elevate their brand. In parallel, Clara and William dedicated an entire month to promoting their equestrian endeavors through new projects, scholarship funds for young riders and mentorship programs that provided underprivileged youth with access to training and support for competing, a vision that resonated broadly with contributors by wielding Clara's renewed influence for widespread positive impact. Inevitably, Clara and Griffiths crossed paths at subsequent events, each shared glance carrying the weight of past decisions coupled with a forward-facing intention to leave no ground for malice. Their interactions, once fraught, now bore the merit of mutual respect refined through experience. On a bright afternoon, as Clara revisited the ranch for an annual charity event supporting her scholarships, she admired the adaptations the ranch had undertaken. Entry points now depicted murals of diverse equestrian icons offering perspectives beyond elite's narrow confines, heralding new chapters written on Clara's heralded advocacy. The sun cast warm rays across the expansive grounds. Valor, watching from his stable, whinnied at her approach. Walking alongside William, she embraced the serenity of nature, her heart swelling with gratitude and fulfillment as they strolled together through the stables. Clara, her mud-stained arrival rejected no longer by the world she had reshaped through quiet grace, now walked amongst these surroundings empowered by authenticity. William smiled, tracing her gaze over the staff and guests who moved around them with newfound openness, reflective of the influence her presence had solidified. "You know," Clara said thoughtfully as they watched horses led into the picturesque paddocks. "The true value of anything doesn't just come from the admired prize but from an unseen journey etched into every stride." And with that, Clara, the woman once deemed insignificant amid grandeur, continued onward, each step a testament to the path she had tread, leaving behind a legacy of change, the heart of the ranch essence forever transformed by her enduring spirit.